to go through all of the front end housekeeping for Cornet, and then we'll get into the program. So first up, we have more great CRAVE webinars coming up over the next month. And if you haven't signed up, I strongly encourage you to take a look and get yourself signed up as soon as possible. We have on October 6th, Keeping Kids Alive, our back to school happy hour. October 8th, the second part of the great debate of 2020. If you didn't see part one, definitely make time for part two. It was really a great discussion. October 9th, we have the Customer Service Masterclass, Elevating Your Career by Learning How to Provide Exceptional Service, which I think sounds like a great topic in today's world. And October 16th, we have New Values in Location Analytics and Their Impacts on Corporate Real Estate. And rounding up in October 22nd, our Young Leader Development Program is putting on this program, War on Talent, from Zoomers to Boomers, what they want in the workplace and why. So that is definitely one for everyone to get in and understand all our young folks. And of course, our social media presence, very important to us on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Check us out there. And if you have any news or events you'd like us to help you promote, please reach out to Steve Smith at Northstar. And of course, this year more than ever, we are thanking our partners, our corporate partners, our sponsors, Platinum, Gold, and Silver. Thank you all for your support this year. And of course, there's a Q&A function, which most of you are probably familiar with. Just send along Q&A, any questions, and I will be taking time to roll those out amongst the panelists during the presentation, but in the interest of time, know that we may wait till the end. So we're going to see how that goes today. We will also be doing live polling. So when you see those poll questions come up, please participate, and they will be part of the presentation as well. Okay, so let's get things started. I'm going to spend a little time talking about the consortium. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Boston Real Estate COVID Consortium, STV DPM, we brought this group that you see on the screen, all the logos of our partner companies that are part of this presentation today. We started that back in March, and we were really looking for a partnership of industry experts to help us figure out what was going on with COVID-19 and how it was impacting our industry. And the result of this collaboration has been 9 great reports that we put out since March on a variety of topics, which actually form the basis of our program today. And that is the real estate market, construction, workplace, change management, HVAC and indoor air quality, and enhanced cleaning protocols. So I am going to get things started. I think we have a poll that's going to come up first before I introduce our first speaker. Here is our poll. What is your organization's biggest challenge related to employees returning to the workplace? Childcare and education system impacts, transportation, site readiness, adoption of remote working, real estate strategy, or other. So if you take a minute to answer that question, that would be great. Okay, so we gave it a minute. Deb, can we show the results? Okay, I was really interested to see this one because they're all big impacts. And number one, childcare and education system. So that's quite enlightening, with transportation not far behind that. So this is very helpful information. Thank you for participating. Our workplace group will definitely be speaking on this topic later. So on to our real estate marketplace roundup. And we have our first presenter, Adam Meixner. Adam is a senior partner at 128 CRE. Adam's focus is on the office leasing and sales sector within the central 128-95 Mass Pike submarket. So Adam, how do you see the market today? Let us know.
Great. Well, thank you, Denise. First off, I want to give a big thank you to Denise, Even, and Sandra from STVDPM for putting together an amazing group of industry experts from the very beginning of the pandemic. And you guys really have done a phenomenal job with everything, and greatly appreciate being included on the team. So thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Adam.
So, I'm going to cover a few different markets in this short period of time that I have to speak today. But before I dive into those, really wanted to just talk about two things. One is work from home. Throughout the pandemic, we've learned that there really are three different levels of people that are working from home. You have the sub 30 class that really needs to be with their colleagues and wants to be in the office. They excel by sitting around, brainstorming, and working as a team in person, as opposed to doing the remote Zoom thing. They like to go out, as a group for lunch and, hang out after work with getting drinks and whatnot. Then you have the 30 plus crowd, who are the ones that really like working from home, and they can deal with personal matters such as children with remote learning and driving to and from school, which is extremely important to a majority of people, as we just saw in the poll that everyone just participated in. It helps to minimize the commute at the beginning and the end of the day, which is really making them much more efficient throughout their day, especially those with the children. And then there's also less interruptions from people walking into their office, every hour or half hour, asking them questions and whatnot. Then the third level really is the C-level executives, who initially were nervous about, keeping people engaged and productive. And as time went on, though, they started to grow comfortable with the whole work from home thing. And, it certainly worked out better than they anticipated. However, now that, quite a bit of time has passed, they're starting to revert back to wanting people to return to the office, as they feel as though they're starting to lack a little creativity, and, it's taking a lot longer to resolve issues that normally someone can pop their head up over a cubicle or pop into someone's office and get it resolved, rather than emailing back and forth and waiting on responses and everything. And one other important thing that a lot of these C-level executives have experienced is onboarding and training people to do their job, how they really want them to. You can only do so much really on Zoom, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, there'll certainly be plenty of companies that stay remote after the vaccine comes out, but an overwhelming majority of our clients actually are saying that they eventually want most, if not all, of their people to come back to the office. And they'll certainly offer some flexibility, as people have been comfortable and used to, kind of the new norm right now. So they don't want to take it away from them completely. The other thing is really, the media. We're all seeing and reading articles on a daily basis, and a lot of people are being led to believe that the entire real estate market is crashing. I can tell you it's not the case, as most of those articles are really focused on the downtown markets, where people are hesitant to go in because they're fearing, getting on public transportation or riding in elevators or sitting in traffic, as most people aren't, going on the public transportation. But as you'll hear in a minute, the entire market as a whole is really not experiencing as many issues as the public is being led to believe. So to cover the four different markets, it's, downtown, it's certainly hurting. Don't get me wrong. It's just not as bad as people think just yet. One thing to keep in mind is a lot of these businesses can't just terminate their leases because they're not utilizing their office space. They have to keep paying their rent regardless of if they're using it or not. And a lot of these leases are going for 3, 5, or 7 more years. So there will be a lag in terms of what the true direct vacancy rates are for some time. We have seen a large uptick in the number of subleases coming on since April 1, but a lot of those have the mentality of if we can sublet it, great. If not, then no big deal, and we'll just return to work return to the office when the time is right. The suburban office, which is more so what I focus on, since June 1, activity has been extremely strong. We've seen a lot of renewals, right sizing, and actually some growth, but very little downsizing. A lot of these executives realize that just because 50% of their workforce is working from home doesn't mean that they can actually cut down their space by 50% because they need to social distance. They, instead of having people sitting on top of each other, need to spread them out and make sure that they're comfortable and not, it's essentially breathing on each other throughout the day. So you're seeing a lot of renewals for space and just spreading people out within that, even if there are people working from home. There are some groups from downtown that are looking out in the suburbs, not necessarily to relocate their whole office, but to open a satellite location so that those people living out in the suburbs have the ability to go in and it's easier rather than driving in and going in the elevators or what have you. And it also allows them to deal with their children who are doing some remote schooling and everything like that. One of the hottest sectors really has been the industrial market, which has been red hot for the past several years, and COVID certainly hasn't slowed that down. There's even more demand for that industrial/warehouse user now, mainly from the last mile carriers, as most people, more people than ever are ordering stuff online and want it being delivered to their house in the next, 1 or 3 to 5 days. So there's been battles for leasing of that industrial and flex space and warehouse space. Just to give you an idea on pricing from an acquisition standpoint, 4 to 5 years ago, a building that was $60 a square foot now is going for over $100 a square foot for the exact same product, which is just amazing how it's just energized that market that was getting much quieter over the past, several years ago, I should say. A few years ago, retail and industrial didn't really, they were rather unrelated, but we've seen that gap close quite a bit due to the Amazons of the world in the last few years. Many of the retailers have shuttered their brick and mortar locations, particularly in the closed shopping malls, and opting for more of the drive-up lifestyle centers or going 100% online. And as a result of those, vacating the shopping malls, a number of the larger REITs are actually exploring or converting their malls to warehouses to fulfill the large-scale vacancies that were left, from a lot of these retailers, for the last mile carriers, which has been interesting to help keep their spaces full. And while the retail market has certainly taken a hit, it'll never become completely obsolete, as there'll always be a need for those people that like to do their shopping in person, or the experiential retailers that eventually will be able to reopen. I think the state actually just allowed for it yesterday, such as Dave & Buster's and trampoline parks, which will help backfill a lot of those big box retail locations that were vacated over the years. Since we have a lot of panelists that are speaking today, I had to rush through everything, but obviously if you'd like to talk more about specific markets, feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to have a conversation about that.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Adam. And yes, if anybody has any further questions for Adam, put them into the Q&A and we'll hit them later in the program. Okay, so moving on to our next topic, which is the construction market. I know everyone is very interested to hear from our next speaker, George McCarron, project executive at Lee Kennedy. George has 40 years of experience in the construction industry, dealing primarily with tenant and corporate accounts. So George, give us the lowdown on what's going on in the world of construction.
Well, in the world of construction, it's constantly evolving, particularly in dealing with the guidelines of COVID. When we did get the mandate to shut down, we were all a little anxious about how do we get back to work? What steps do we need to do? And, so you have the federal guidelines, the state guidelines, and then there was a back and forth with some of the local municipalities. Boston and Cambridge particularly had a twist on it. And some of these guidelines have been modified. Cambridge still maintains their original status. Excuse me. But the guidelines were not just something that came down from the government officials. It also involved the trade unions, general contractors, and various other components to make sure that when we do go back to work and we are released, that we are taking all the precautions we can to ensure the safety of the workers and the any public access to particular buildings. You know, we have many things that we put in place. We have site access, temperature readings that were required on all jobs at one point. But really, it's shifted more to a self-evaluation of each individual worker, making sure that he has met the requirements via a questionnaire that is answered before they can get access to the site. The screening that we have done and a lot of other GCs have done, basically it keeps a record of who's been on the job, when they were on the job, and in case there is an issue, that contact tracing really is a valuable tool in case there was an incident on a project where someone might have been exposed. We also have a change in the quarantine time. It went from 14 days down to 10 days for symptomatic, but for asymptomatic, it is still at 14 days. One of the big concerns we faced is really identifying to our client what the cost impacts these COVID policies would have on ongoing projects and future projects. You know, when the COVID crisis hit, you know, we had to identify in our contracts what force majeure policies were implemented within the contract, and then try to identify what these costs would be to the client. Now, when we have certain things that we can actually identify as costs, the PPE and cleaning requirements. But one of the things that was tough to figure out was the site access, just how long it would take to get into a particular project, particularly if you're working on a high rise. So we had to implement game plans around that to make sure that the entrance into a site was efficient and the cost was not exorbitant. We have done that through shift work, and then the other issue is we had concerns about labor pool. As mentioned earlier, the daycare for particular workers has an impact on the family group. So this was something that we had to closely monitor and identify upfront with a delay in schedule. Results. So on this particular slide, I think one of the most important things is that we are transparent. If there is an issue on a job, we are transparent with the owner, the building owner, the property manager, the other subcontractors that may be involved on the project. And another is we communicate and forecast project goals and potential issues up front so that we have a pathway that if an issue did come up, we have a solution readily available to handle that issue. And collaboration is another key component to a successful project during a COVID crisis. Discussions with the design teams, property managers, subcontractors, trades, clients, and municipalities. The big thing that we're finding we're having success with is that we are being diligent with our protocols. The subcontractors have bought into that. The vendors have bought into that, and we've communicated that to the team.
So consistency is the key, right, George? Once you have your plan.
Do
you want to speak to this slide? I know this was very interesting to see.
Right. On this particular slide, it's a project that was recently completed. And as you can see, in March, we had a peak of workers that were on site, and then COVID hit, and then it basically flatlined. And then after pre-COVID, you can see that some of these tasks never really got back to pre-COVID status, with the exception of the electrical believe it or not, the lights showed up on time, and we needed to upload the electrical contractor to get that in place.
That sure is unusual.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I think if we were looking at it for pre-COVID, we would have had a flatter line there, but because of COVID, we had you know, that gave enough time for the manufacturer to deliver the lights.
Sure.
You know,
Okay.
you know.
Great.
So,
well, I need to move you on because I have
you.
a much bigger group here with the workplace I have to get to next. So thank you, George. I'll introduce our workplace group. And we have 5 folks, some of which you will probably recognize here, starting with Gable Clark. Gable is the head of SGA's interior design practice. She's responsible for project oversight, client relations, business development, mentoring, and firm leadership. We also have Amy Lazzari, who is a partner and director of client solutions at Environments at Work, a full service contract furnishings consultant specializing in providing adaptable solutions for all ways of work. We also have someone I think most of you will recognize for sure, which is Suzanne LeBlanc, who has long serviced Coronet New England. Thank you, Suzanne. She is the Global Real Estate and Facilities Director for Mercury Systems, headquartered in Andover, Mass. And at Mercury, Suzanne is responsible for all real estate strategy, transactions, projects, and facilities for their office and manufacturing portfolio globally. We also have Carolyn Desmond, a Vice President of Development at Skanska Commercial Development. Carolyn has over 16 years of experience in real estate development, working on complex projects ranging from office, mixed use, multifamily, apartments, and urban retail. She has managed all aspects of the real estate development process, including acquisition, financing, design development, construction oversight, leasing, and divestment. And lastly, we have Mike Tufts, the Chief Human Resources Officer at N&D Group. Mike joined the N&D Group in June of 2017, bringing more than 20 years of experience to his role as CHRO. He provides leadership and subject matter expertise in talent management, business continuity planning, and facilities management for the organization. He also serves as the chair of the Business Continuity Planning and Retirement Plans Committees. So Gable, as the leader of the workplace group, I'm going to hand off to you to moderate for your team.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Denise, and thank you everyone for being here. So we're going to chat today a little bit about both the short-term implications to the workplace and the long-term implications to the workplace. And then we're going to get some of these wonderful end-user perspectives. So as many folks start to re-enter the workplace, we've all been faced with the need to make short-term modifications in order to make the space safe and welcoming to those employees who are coming back. So some of the things that we're looking at: seating charts, density, things of that nature, safety protocols, certainly making sure we've got the right PPE, also the introduction of signage and graphics to communicate, you know, and everything from wayfinding to behavioral protocols and things of that nature. So why don't we take a moment here and Suzanne, let you weigh in on that and how you're seeing things at Mercury.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Gable. Thank you, Denise. Good afternoon, everybody. So I wanted to start actually by just mentioning what Mercury does, which you'll see in a moment why that's relevant. But we create mission critical technology for the aerospace and defense industry. And because of that, we were you know, deemed an essential business. So that meant we've actually had all our sites in operation since COVID started in March. And so for every office, it's been a bit different in terms of the percent of our population that's been in the office. So it ranges from maybe 5% to high as 50%. So because of that, we may be ahead of some others in terms of all the things we have been doing on site and the lessons we've been learning. And some of those lessons we've been learning alongside various other sort of companies, technology companies, et cetera. An example of that is the temperature check kiosk, where I think we helped pioneer some improvements there. So So some of the things I just wanted to, quickly mention that we have been doing. I should also, mention we are a mix of manufacturing, lab, and office. So we obviously have some different issues and concerns with each of those types of spaces. But with that said, we've done a lot, and I did want to mention as well that our CEO, Mark Aslett, was actually ranked as the #1 CEO by Glassdoor for his handling and our company's response to the COVID crisis. So we'll talk more about that, I think, later in the presentation in terms of some of those things we did to support employees. But just to give a little backdrop and sort of the breadth of the program we've had in place. So we have done, in terms of safety, we have done everything from the temperature check kiosks. We also have started doing virus testing weekly in various sites. We supplement that depending on what the findings are with a partnership with CVS where we do drive-through testing. We've also are rolling out an app that's a symptom checker called Buoy that employees are requested to do prior to coming into the office. And then one of the other things I did want to mention, which I think may be unique, I haven't heard it from too many other companies, we did retain a chief medical advisor who's a doctor who's provided us guidance in a lot of these areas. So he's helped us kind of prioritize from a safety perspective, what should we focus on, which actually has been shifted as CDC guidance shifted as well from being so focused on touch to more focus on HVAC, which we'll certainly be touching on later. But we've done a variety of things around the safety, but in the end, it really ties down to the last bullet around behavior, because what we have found since March is sort of different levels of acceptance and response to the protocols we have put in place. So around that, we obviously try to be sure our leadership is modeling the behaviors we want employees to do. So because we do have manufacturing where those employees have to have masks on at all times, we have even folks who are that have their own private offices need to have their masks on when they are in their private offices. So we've really had to go to pretty zero tolerance policy around a lot of these things. But really underlying all that is very key is all the communication we've been doing out to employees on a very regular basis through a variety of forums, through town halls and emails and blogs and reminders, packages we've sent home to people's offices. So, underlying all this, of course, comes back to, how humans are reacting to all of this in the workplace and the things we can do to help ensure that they're keeping themselves, their family, and their coworkers safe when they're in the office. And the only other thing I would mention on the response to changes in CDC guidance, which have taken some work to keep up on, we also have an attorney internally who keeps us posted very regularly with all the different state mandates and updates, because that's so key as well, where there's such a discrepancy between different states and how they approach things. So we're constantly, obviously tracking CDC guidance, but also state. So I would encourage that as well. So thank you.
Great. I need to jump in for a minute because we have a couple polls we want to do quickly before we get on to the next slide and hand off to Amy. So Deb, if you don't mind putting up those polls, that would be great. Okay, so our poll number 2, what is your organization's main business driver in returning to the workplace? Culture, collaboration, innovation, mentoring and learning, productivity, or other? And number 2, what percentage of your workforce do you expect will continue to work remotely 1 or more days a week post-vaccine? And we have some percentages here. So we'll give that a minute. Okay, so Deb, can we close that and see the results? Okay, so Gable and team looks pretty close. It's collaboration number 1, the loss of collaboration, and culture. which makes a lot of sense, just the distance that people are feeling. And as far as a percentage, 50% or more of organizations are expecting to remain remote, even into the future.
Wow, that's interesting to hear. Probably not surprising, but I think it does start to play into some of the things we're going to be chatting about in a moment. Amy, do you want to touch base a little bit on short-term protocols with furniture and things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. In interest of time, I know we've all been living this short-term furniture implications, which are really being driven by, organizations, protocols, and strategies that are being put in place, similar to what Gable and Suzanne were speaking to. So I would just say, though, the big takeaway here that we're seeing is that in most cases with any of this, it's really not one solution. It tends to be a layering of solutions. And maybe, more importantly, it's not a one size fits all approach. So, that's really been our biggest takeaway is, understanding what's the right approach for your organization. One of the examples that we highlighted here was assigned versus unassigned seating. There's a lot of pros and cons to both. I know that it's something that people are deciding, what's the right level of control while maintaining that flexibility in the environment. So I think in interest of time, I think we want to spend a little bit more time on the long term. If there's questions around the assigned and unassigned, we can dive into that in the Q&A. So long term, I think what we see here, as we're seeing the mind shift of, short to long term, there's really an opportunity for us all to reevaluate that landscape. And that's really what we look at from the workplace strategy side is, I think we can all agree it's going to look a little different, probably need to perform a little different in the future. We're really seeing a need for it to be much more flexible. Flexibility is key, and really more of a dynamic and resilient workplace. So some of these things, there's a lot of things to discuss here. It's a very robust topic. So we're just showing here maybe some things to really consider. As that poll showed, remote working is really been adopted and at pretty high percentages. And we're seeing a hybrid model and a hybrid approach really be looked at from a long term. And what is that balance of physical and digital space that you need to provide to support that hybrid approach, as well as advancements in technology, whether it's sensors and data to inform strategy and design, or if it's AI and apps to engage employees and enhance the employee experience. We're really seeing a really what I would say a benefit in ways to improve the work experience for people when they do return to workplace. And then the last two, furniture to support choice and variety, 100%, flexibility, can't say flexibility enough. It's the word that just gets repeated over and over, which makes a lot of sense that it's really about where and when do people need to do their best work, and how agile can that furniture be and how flexible can it be to support really an untethered workforce in the future. And then for the last one, I'm gonna loop Gable back into this conversation. This has been a really interesting conversation back to the why employees would come back to the workplace. So Gable, I'll kick it back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. I think with COVID-19, it's really been a disruptor to the workplace, to say the least. So over the years, the workplace has seen many disruptors, whether it's the changing technology or the introduction of different generations to the workplace. COVID-19 has certainly been a disruptor, really because of, I think, the sort of global forced experiment of working from home and how people adapted to that. And the poll questions were really interesting because we're seeing a lot of companies are realizing the benefit of work from home from an employee perspective, but we're all very social creatures and we miss that collaboration. And, it's no surprise to see that companies really want to foster that in the built environment. So now more than ever, the workplace really needs to be a destination experience. So how do you draw people there? How do you encourage them to get up from their home and go into the office? And so the way the workplace looks is likely to change quite a bit. So I'd love to bring Carolyn into the conversation to offer us some of your perspective. Carolyn?
Sure. Thanks, Gable. Appreciate it. Of course, at Skanska and as a commercial developer in general, having the workplace as a destination is kind of fundamental to what we do to be successful. So it is important that we're focusing on this. And I mean, we've talked about it a lot. You saw the poll, and it's been the conversation for the last 7 months, that at home, while you can be productive, you lose the socialization, collaboration, and then truly promoting and enhancing the company culture and identity for your company. So it's important to be back at the office, to have those casual encounters and encourage creativity. And how do you do that? It's really, creating a range of different types of working environments. And I think I would be remiss to also say that it's also about, to not say that it's not also about the location of these buildings, right? You want to be surrounded by the amenities of a neighborhood or a city, or things that draw people in to work that you can't get from your living room. So, we are really focusing at Skanska on some of our new developments, looking at how to create these different spaces into different types of amenities in the building. And, obviously with COVID and the new health concerns, talking about incorporating more operable windows and fresh air into the building, which we'll talk a little bit about later in the presentation. But it's hard in New England to do that, and with the new energy code. So we are trying to make amenity spaces or certain offices really look at having operable windows and more opportunity for fresh air. And one thing that I think I personally believe, and this is not necessarily a corporate kind of requirement or anything we're looking into, but I really think that there's going to be a shift in the way we look at childcare in our tenant spaces and as a amenity to the building. And I've seen this in Europe, the way that they incorporate a lot of child space in the office spaces. So maybe you'll have if there's something that happens at your child's school, but you can't miss the office, they can come in and there's a playroom for them in your office space. And I understand that changes, how much space you have to rent, but if it's a large tenant, maybe that's something that we'll see a lot more of. And I mean, the poll suggested that is one of the biggest concerns is how do people care for their kid? And, maybe there can be, a place where someone can distance learn if needed in the future in the office space of their parents. So those are just some things that we're looking at and that I think are important to make the workplace a real destination.
Thank you, Carolyn. That's great. And I'd love to hear from you, Mike, as well, to weigh in on what you're seeing, particularly with being in HR and the emotional well-being component.
Yeah, I think, today there's more than ever the connection between the workplace and well-being. It's exploding. And the connection between organizational culture in the physical work environment has always been one that I firmly believed and experienced myself as being extremely important, but that's exploding too. And so this theme destination theme is, I think, exactly right. And we have to get it right as leaders in our organizations to allow people to have that, to feel safe in the workplace and to, bring their best selves to their job every day. And we know that when people feel that way and they bring their best selves, they produce better results. So all the things on the slide here are definitely front and center. This idea of air quality and improved ventilation, everyone's thinking about that and talking about that. And it's amazing what the employees are picking up on now. So, this is spot on. This stuff has to be done right.
Yep. And we'll be talking about that a little later with Ray Doyle. So he'll be highlighting all of that healthy workspace technology. Okay, so I think Gabe will be ready to wrap up this group.
I think so.
Suzanne, yeah, great. Suzanne and Mike are going to hang on because our next topic is a great jumping off point for the emotional well-being and the people side of what we're talking about, which is change management. And our speaker is Eva Hammery. And Eva is a senior project planner and change management advisor at STV DPM. I work with Eva quite a bit and have enjoyed that over the past 15 years. She is an industry leader in the management of complex client relocation projects. And with her experience as a certified ProSci change management advisor, she is able to create and implement change strategies which maximize adoption and minimize resistance. So Eva, I'll hand off to you.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. So change is really one of the words of the year for 2020. So that has propelled change management as a workplace methodology to the forefront. You know, people who never talked about change management before are saying, oh, you know, this is the thing of the hour. So I would imagine most of you know what change management is, but for those of you who might not, it's the people side of change. So in the change management world, we talk about individual change and we talk about enterprise change. Enterprise change management is about the workplace as a whole, the company change, the individual change. So we talk about it in terms of change intelligence, or CQ. Like IQ, CQ is the measure of how people can adapt to change. And the thought is that it's generally in a triangular kind of format, with the top of the triangle being the head. And that's generally where the people in the C-suite fall. They are the people who are thinking and strategizing about change. Then there's the hands, which are the people, the hands are the task-oriented people, generally project management, accomplishing the change by physically doing something. Then there's the heart. The heart is the people side of change. Often the heart is represented by people in HR or a change team. And this COVID crisis has really pushed the necessary part of the heart in business to the forefront. It's really forced, as we say in the slide, the swing for the C-suite and beyond to go from their heads to their hearts and really be thinking about the importance of personal well-being. Employees are craving that reassurance that their safety and security and health for the employees and those they love are really at the forefront of their employers' thoughts at this time. And so, you know, the C-suite has really tried to get their arms around this and thinking a little differently because, you know, they think about productivity quite a bit. One of the statistics I've heard is that 47% of companies that were surveyed by ProtoScore Research said that since COVID in 2020, the beginning of 2020, 47% say that they've had an increase in productivity. So that helps the C-suite to feel a little better about the heart. I know that my colleagues on the panel, Suzanne and Mike, have a little bit more they'd like to share about this particular aspect of change intelligence and what people are feeling. So I'd like to turn it over to them.
Yeah, Suzanne, why don't you, if you don't mind stepping in, because I know your C-suite has been all over this, and I'd love to hear how that happened and how that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Very good. Thank you. So yeah, so much to cover, but I'll try to be succinct here. But certainly this was, I think, first and foremost for our CEO and our executive leadership team. And again, hence I think why we ended up number one. So it was a variety of things we did, from immediately increasing the number of sick days. I think we added at least another 14 days to everybody in the event they were either sick or had to be quarantined. We gave employees access to a couple of different resources like care.com to provide help around childcare, as well as Headspace around, you know, obviously mental and emotional well-being. We sent everybody who was working from home, had the opportunity to select a chair if they wanted, ergonomic chair, as well as sent, you know, double monitors, docking stations, all that kind of thing. But then we even did some things that you might not think of, like we actually doubled the hourly rate for hourly workers who had to work overtime. So when all was said and done, oh, and one other thing, we also set up a $1 million relief fund for anybody who might need it to help supplement if they were having to be quarantined or there was some impact to their family. So that was obviously very much appreciated. So I think at this point, we perhaps have invested around $2.4 million in all of that, as well as some of the facility changes. And I think that our CEO felt it was very well rewarded. So not only did we get that great ranking, but we also had one of our best quarters from a business perspective while we were at it. So it was a clearly a good investment there. The other thing we've been trying to do in terms of sort of change management or introduction of the change is we've done a lot of pilots in a variety of locations. You know, our executive leadership team's actually kicking off a pilot here for us in Andover, where they'll be the first ones in. So people, I think, appreciate that sort of leadership. And then we're doing some other things that have been fun, like we've developed welcome back videos that go out to any employees who will be returning to the office. We tried to make them both humorous and informative, but there were, you know, different things we did, like we've set up zones in every building where people can or can't go in. And so that sort of thing helps us from a contact tracing perspective and mapping that correlates to the testing that we're doing. And so those things were very new, and we needed to make sure employees understood that. So those videos were very helpful that way. But obviously the number one thing goes without saying is communicating. So Mike, I'm sure you have more to add.
That was great, Suzanne. Thank you. I think for us, this whole situation has resulted in a completely unexpected and previously unfathomable acceleration of change. And, you know, we went from an institution that has very few people working from home to the entire workforce working remotely. And we've stayed that way for 6 months. So I think all of the change components that go along with that kind of an evolution that happened literally overnight, you really have to step back and say, okay, how has this impacted people? How do we communicate? How frequently do we communicate? In what form? So this whole entire situation has resulted in organizations thinking like they've never thought before. And there's definitely a silver lining in that, because it's allowed a lot of us to evolve very quickly and into a better place. So I think, you know, this goal of, you know, resiliency for organizations has been achieved to a large extent. So, you know, communication is the key to well-being for employees. When they don't have the answers, they fill in the blank with the worst possible scenario you can imagine. And so I think to Suzanne's point about communicating often, frequently, I am a big believer in strategic repetition through the change management process. So, you know, why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it. So I think Eva's model here is great. It's a great tool that all of you can take away. I'll certainly use it.
Thank you, Michael. My colleagues here have talked a lot about these different categories, and in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few of them, or maybe say very quickly: change, acceleration, and urgency. John Cotter, who's a renowned change expert, talks about the number one most important thing about making change happen is the urgency to it. Well, we had that built in with COVID. So what it's done is accelerated some trends that were already happening, and those trends are listed on the slide: hybrid work, importance of culture, etc. Most of my colleagues have been talking about these, so I won't talk about that. But I'd like to talk quickly about change readiness, because that's the real success indicator in a change project. You have to understand if your company is change averse. That's a very important understanding to have right off the bat. But then you need to make sure you have certain qualities. And COVID has shown that many companies were much more ready and having these qualities than they ever thought. They're more agile. They have the ability to pivot. And pivot is one of those other words of the year. They were much more aligned than they realized. They were collaborative, adaptable. That's very important for a change project. And as Mike talked about, some of the important methodology and also Suzanne, the active and visible leaders at the forefront of that change. They need to walk the walk, talk the talk, really make people understand that they're with them. There should be frequent, cadenced, empathetic, and transparent communication. Communication is the cornerstone. It's so very important because communication is part of the culture, and culture becomes so much more important during times of uncertainty. And another very important thing is seeking feedback. We're using surveys here. I've seen clients use surveys like they never had before to understand where their employees stand. This should be something that continues into the remote work environment where people in the new normal, when maybe 50% of people are working from home at some point, the companies should continue to seek feedback and understand what's working and what's not working. You should take that away from this experience so that you reach your goal. And your goal should be a long-term organizational agility, resiliency, and capacity for change for whatever comes next, because we don't know what's going to come next, right?
Be ready for anything.
Right. With a good change management structure and methodology, you should be ready for it.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Eva.
For the opportunity.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay.
So we're going to move on. I did want to say that we do have a couple polls. Deb, if you don't mind putting those up, and we're going to have you quickly do those if you can, in the interest of time. I did want to note that we have 2 more presenters, and it looks like we're going to run over a little bit. We're happy to stick around. We hope you can too. Looks like we'll probably be about 5 minutes over on time. So hopefully hang in there with us. So let's see those polls. So Deb, are we able to do the polls, or we can, I know Ray is going to touch on each of those. So I guess I'll just jump in, Ray. Oh, here we go. Okay, we've got our poll number 3. What is the impact of increased ventilation on workspace? Reduction of viruses, clean air, or greater cognitive ability? Number 2, if an office space is part of a multi-tenant floor, I am stuck with my landlord's ability or inability to invest in indoor air quality improvements. True or false? What is the average return on investment for improving indoor air quality? Less than 2 years, 2 to 4 years, or greater than 4 years? So take a second to respond to those. Okay, Deb, let's see if we can give Ray the results here. Okay.
Oh, great.
So,
and we'll bounce through these as we go through the presentation again, so you'll see the responses. And
let me just give you a quick intro. So Ray Doyle is our managing principal from WB Engineers and Consultants. He works out of their Washington, D.C. office, and he is their practice leader for life science. He has over 25 years of experience, loves engineering and the teaching and research that come with that profession, which you'll see as part of his presentation. He has led WB's efforts to help clients find solutions to improve indoor air quality and reduce tenants' exposure to COVID-19. So Ray, go ahead.
Thank you for that introduction. So we'll jump right in. The first thing we did was determine short-term and long-term opportunities to try and address and reduce exposure to COVID. So the first thing, the most logical thing, is to increase your filtration. We wanted to make sure that people, if they could, increase their filter efficiencies. And by doing so, you could simply take a MERV 8 and improve it to a MERV 13 and reduce the amount of particles. You can improve reduce your exposure to particles by 4x, which is a pretty impressive thing to do. And most air handling units can all do that today without having to change out motors or shivs or do any major replacements. You may need to change that filter a little more frequently to have that higher efficiency, but it's well worth it in this time. The other thing we've seen in this period of COVID in the last 6 months is the cost of filters have gone up. We would have said a MERV change from a MERV 8 to a MERV 13 would have been about $1,000 to $2,000, but it's near doubled, and in some cases higher than that in today's market. There's some long-term strategy, increased filtration beyond that, but the short-term strategy is the main thing you want to address. Dilution ventilation is the second thing that we talk about in the short term. Main thing is to make sure you get the bad air out and get more good air in, more clean, fresh air in. The interesting thing about this strategy and some of the strategies that we're going to talk about here as we talk about indoor air quality is that COVID may have been the driver for the change, but the real benefit of the change is going to be post-COVID. It's going to be healthier buildings for everybody to live and work in. And the health of people and the health of our environments is, to me, one of the most important things that we can do to change society and make it a better place for us all to live. So just by bringing in more outside air, if you said you were going to bring in, let's just say 130% of the minimum code, which is in most people's minds, if they don't know, is a lead point, also and get you points in the well credit system. It does a lot more than that, than just get you points in a system to give you credibility. It actually gives you an enhanced ability to think clearly and actually reduce the CO2 levels. But the cost of it is actually a lot lower than you'd think. At $4,000 for a typical floor, I'll use the example of a 20,000 square foot floor plate. It's about $4,000 a year to add that outside air. The decision-making process, this is a pretty complicated slide, but the thing I like to point out is in the focus activity, as somebody that's doing a presentation, or picture a teacher in a school, or somebody that's mentoring another person in an office, if you're the focus person, the reduction, or should say the reduction in indoor air quality or the increase in CO2 levels isn't that impacted if you look at that focus column. But when you start to look at the person that may be listening to you, maybe the people on the other end of this Zoom call that are trying to listen to me are probably, if they're in a space that has higher CO2, are less likely to be able to comprehend all of the principles and practices and the information being provided. So a lot of layers of information there. So I'll jump past that in the interest of time as well. And I may have leaked the answer to the question, but the way we like to look at the biggest impact to increasing ventilation is a greater cognitive ability. While it does, reduce exposure and it does give you cleaner air, the biggest thing you get is a greater cognitive ability to think and process information. Some of the maybe a little more longer term strategies are things that include active mitigation. UVGI is ultraviolet light, and we recommend doing that and installing that in the air handling unit system downstream of the cooling coil to not only keep the coil clean, but actually kill COVID particles and virus particles that pass through the air handling unit and the air handling unit system. It's a low cost solution. It can be around $15,000 to $20,000 per floor, again, based on that 20,000 square foot floor plate with a single air handling unit. So we'll jump to the next one. Additional ways to provide active mitigation. There's two other technologies that are out there being promoted in the marketplace. You have PCOs, which is a photo catalytic oxidation. And that is a process that uses UVGI lights and titanium screens dipped in an epoxy resin, and it creates something called a hydroxyl. And the hydroxyl is just an ion, if you will. It's a very unstable ion, and that ion, it wants to break apart carbon chains. In the case of COVID and other viruses, it breaks them apart. It breaks apart things like smoke, fossil fuels that may be getting into the airstream from outside, and also pollen helps with a lot of different carbon chains that may be in your airstream. So that kind of solution in that same floor, 20,000 square foot floor plate, is in the range of $40,000. It has a huge advantage right now in California because PCOs break down smoke. They actually eliminate it. And so they're being implemented all over in buildings in California. The ionization air purification is the next technology I want to talk about. And the interesting thing about that is that it is similar to a PCO in the fact that it creates ions, but it's very different in the fact that in the case of a PCO, the ions have a half-life of about a half a second, and they dissipate as they do their job in the air handling unit. Ionization systems that are out there that flood spaces with ions, either from the duct or generated in the space, create live ions in the breathing zone to kill particles in the air, clump particles together, and also kill active particles on surfaces. It is a very impressive technology and also a very effective technology. The only concern that we have from our standpoint is that the ions are in the breathing zone and they get in your lungs and in your eyes and on your nose and all kinds of things like that. So the long-term health problems that may be generated by ions at that level of concentration is a little concerning to us. So we're not recommending ionization in occupied mode, but I think it does have a place in the solutions to improve indoor air quality. So we talked about this, and I think that the reason we say false is because you should be able to do just about well, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of these technologies yourself. You don't have to wait for your landlord. You can do these things on your own. So this kind of payback or return on investment solution we talk about is the same 20,000 square feet. It's a workplace, 200 square foot per person, 200 people in a single air handling unit. You find yourself looking at the next slide.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was doing good there for a while.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to cook through it. So in the interest of making sure everybody being respectful of their time. So the idea that if the average person in the United States has, 4 sick days a year, and there's been several studies that have attributed 1.5 sick days to poor indoor air quality for various reasons. If the average salary is around $75,000, you got the hourly rates, and you find yourself at a total simple cost of about $43,000 a year. And really, you have to realize as I read through these line items, we're talking about human capital, not return on investment on energy savings. It's the people. It's what's important right now. People's safety, people's ability to think better, people's ability to be in a cleaner environment so that they're less likely to get sick and less likely to take that sickness and share it with everybody else. So the health of the human occupant in an office building is paramount. So then if you look at the cost, you could say, okay, well, you're increasing outside air 4,000, you have filtration at another 4,000. You might use UVGI, you might have some engineering and some oversight cost. But the total cost is about $44,000. So the simple payback from that slide before is around $43,000. So you're really looking at something that could be paid for itself in less than a year. And if you were investing money in Wall Street, you'd be doing it in a heartbeat. You would want to you take advantage of a payback like this. And we need to take advantage of the fact that people are the most important element. That's the capital. That's what makes all of our businesses function. So the return on investment for a good indoor quality is less than 2 years. And with that, I'll pass it on to our next speaker. Okay, any questions, feel free to email them at the end.
Yes, we'll wrap up soon, and we have a few questions on Q&A. Hopefully we can get to those, but yeah, we'll be moving along quickly to our anchor man.
Bring up the rear.
Sorry, Stephen White. Stephen White is the founder and president of PES Associates, a national engineering and environmental firm with headquarters in Hingham, Mass. And throughout his career, he has gained extensive experience in environmental consulting, property due diligence, and industrial hygiene. So, Steve.
Thanks, Denise. As a W, I'm used to bringing up the rear, so.
There you go.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging in there. I know we're a little bit over time, and I'll go as quickly as possible. I don't need to tell everybody there's a lot of information flowing around out there, and it can be overwhelming. Sorting through what works, what doesn't, what protocols, what cleaning products, and one of the great things about this consortium that I have appreciated is that everybody took their own area of expertise and took the time to go through all of the minutia, all of the information that's flowing out there on Twitter and all these other websites, social media, CDC, EPA, and applied their expertise and sort of get down to the nuts and bolts to share very valuable information to the real estate industry. So, and that's what we did here. My firm is getting countless calls on, hey, what do you think about this cleaning product? What do you think about this technology? What do you think about this protocol? And it's sort of driven us to do exactly what I just said, go plow through all the information. I mean, it's our area of expertise, and someone who's trying to run a business or run a portfolio or run a building just doesn't have the time to do those things. So I just want to say that I find all the other topics in this consortium very valuable to me, and I think it's a really good tool. And I think Denise did a fantastic job of pulling it all together. So, I don't want to sound cavalier, but don't overthink cleaning and disinfecting. the truth is that the coronavirus is very easy to kill. Yeah, it's really contagious, and people are getting really sick, but it's also very easy to kill, and it's something as basic as warm soap and water. Round and round we went with all these emerging technologies, and you know, what the latest and greatest that comes out, people selling snake oil, the flavor of the month or whatever. The universal opinion, all the regulating authorities and all the other public health groups is clean with soap and water, and then follow with disinfecting. The complication comes with the disinfecting and what chemicals to use, and there's a list called the EPA List N, and I think there's over almost 500 cleaning products on there that have been approved by the EPA. The problem comes in sorting out which ones work for you, which ones don't, which ones are hypoallergenic, which ones aren't, which ones stain surfaces and things. So it takes a little bit of effort to go through that list and figure out what works. Fogging and emerging technologies are not quite yet sanctioned by EPA and CDC, although I will say they do provide comfort, and they shouldn't be the sole method of cleaning and disinfecting. But again, if your employees know you're cleaning and disinfecting regularly and applying fogging and things, I think it helps, but do not rely on these advancing technologies as a sole way to clean and disinfect. This group here, I think you can see everything sort of is intertwined, and to have a good cleaning and sanitation program, you have to have engineering controls in place. You have to have the administrative controls, whether it's work schedules or whatever, as everybody talked about earlier, good cleaning and disinfection. But the most important thing is personal hygiene. Cleaning and disinfecting is a snapshot. It's on the day you clean, it's clean. But if everything else is out of sync, whether it's your engineering controls or your personal hygiene, it's worthless if people are bringing in the virus to a clean facility. So don't have one sole point of failure. You'll have backups and have a multi-layered approach to your cleaning and disinfecting program. Here's some other highlights, I think, real quick. Basically proper hygiene is a must. Provide your employees with tools to be successful. Educational products, cleaning products, sanitizing products, and you can have a company come in and test to make sure that your cleaning and disinfecting program is effective. That may add some comfort as well. And as I alluded to earlier, we've done a ton of research, but here's some of my favorite resources that we've used here at PES. Obviously, everybody relies on the CDC and EPA. Actually, the World Health Organization. There are conflicting opinions between some of these organizations, so it's always good to read multiple sources. I think my favorite is the ResearchGate or American Industrial Hygiene. Industrial hygienists have spent a tremendous amount of time researching these products for years and researching protocols and programs. And so I just want to make sure I share some of this literature with you and this is really kind of how we sort through all the minutiae.
And folks can reach out to you, right, Steve, with any
Sure.
questions on how to get this information.
Yep.
So we're over by quite a bit here, but our team has said they will stay on for 5 more minutes, and it looks like we have 63 folks that hung in there with us. We have a good group. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A and go through a couple of questions that came in during the program, and anyone who wants to launch any more, let us know. So the first question that came in earlier, and I guess this is more for the workplace team, but based on the poll results, how would you measure and quantify collaboration and culture aspects to optimize workspaces? So Gable.
Hi. Yeah. I thought this was interesting. Certainly with collaboration, you can't just put 2 people in a room together and say, go collaborate, make some magic happen, right? So I think we really have to understand how people want to use the space. and what sorts of, you know, furniture solutions and technology solutions are going to facilitate the type of ideation that we're looking for when two people are in a space together. So I think, you know, as an organization, you have to observe that behavior and see, are people leveraging the space in the way that you're hoping they will? Is the space facilitating and supporting the type of interaction that you're hoping to have happen? And then as an organization, are you seeing the results of that? From a culture standpoint, I think it's really important to understand what defines your culture first and foremost as an organization, and then ask people what they miss about that, because I think that's what you have to really focus on when you're thinking about your workplace and how your environment can help define that. And I know there's been a lot of discussion too about, well, if you establish a culture that's tied to the workplace, how does that then get supplemented when people are working from home? You know, how does not only the culture, but how does the brand translate from a physical office environment to, you know, a remote environment as well? So just some quick thoughts there, but Amy, or certainly anyone else, if you have any thoughts on that, chime in.
No,
yeah, this is Carolyn. I was just going to say one thing. I think also a lot will be shown by the way people are able to recruit talent coming out of universities. If you're not able to show a culture that your company represents, then I think it's going to be really tough to recruit.
That's a good point.
And this is Suzanne, I would just add that, yeah, obviously that is a very challenging thing. We certainly are doing a lot of surveying with our employees, both those who are in the office and those who are working remote, to get their thoughts. We've done a number of focus groups, and one of the sort of challenges around that is I think there's a perception by those who are working in the office that those who are working remote have it much better off, and vice versa in some cases. So that's something you have to be aware of as well with culture. But, you know, a little too soon for us to say how the collaboration back in the office is really working at this point, because we have closed off a number of our meeting rooms, or like many, just really reduced the capacity there. But one of the shifts we'll be looking at making is certainly trying to create more open area collaboration spaces than we even have today, because we are very concerned with the air quality in, you know, smaller enclosed spaces. So that's something we're looking at too.
Okay. All right, so we're right up against 1:15. So I think I didn't get any other new questions, but I wanted to thank, number one, thank our panelists and speakers for their time, and great presentation. Thanks for all the information. We will be distributing, for anyone who's interested, the slide deck. And thank you to everyone who joined us today, and know that our consortium is actually going to be doing some more live webinars to continue the conversation. So look forward to that. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.